Mm-hmm.
To begin, do you agree to using your true name in
Yes.
today's interview?
Yes.
Do you agree to being recorded today?
Yes.
Do you have any questions for me before we start?
Not yet.
I want to make sure you know that you can stop the video at any point or revoke consent at any point during or after filming.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer any questions you do not want to.
Sure.
Your interview will be held in the rerouted archive, but if at any point you wish to have it removed, you may contact the archive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Today we will be talking about your life in chronological order, from your family's history to your own childhood, into your sense of identity and stories of your life. Please add as much detail as you wish. I may bring back the chronological flow of the questions, but please speak openly.
Okay.
And then just have you read what we looked at. If you could read it out loud.
I agree to the recording of the interview given by me in relation to Rerouted and to any films that may be made from it. I hereby give you all consent necessary for the use and exploitation of the interview within Rerouted without time limit throughout the world by all media, whether not known or hereafter discovered, developed, or invented, without liability to me. Provided the context remains unchanged, you shall be entitled to cut and edit the interview as you wish and use the interview, my image or likeness for the purposes of advertising and publicizing Rerouted and for any films that may be made from it.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
To begin, where is your family originally from?
From Armenia, from Yerevan.
And when did you come to Poland, and from where?
I came to Poland in 1979.
And how long have you been in Poland?
Since then, many years.
So, kind of going, to your childhood, before you came to Poland, what did your family do? And do you have any information about where they lived or what their lives were like? Which, of course, you do.
What my family did,
Mm-hmm.
I mean parents.
Yes.
Well, my father died when I was 7 years old in 1962. He was a very experienced person. He was managing director of, for example, Jermuk, famous mineral waters factory, the first. He was the editor-in-chief of newspapers in early years. Anyway, so he had a very interesting life. But unfortunately, he died having only 52 years old, being only 52 years old. My mother was the speaker of Yerevan radio. She had a perfect voice and intonation, and later she worked, she was a linguist, Armenian literature, history, and language. And later years she was a teacher of Armenian language in Yerevan, 2 schools in Yerevan. by the way, one of the schools was a Russian school. Russian, well, it was Armenian Russian. And the Russian pupils who were attending her classes, thanks to my mom, they were speaking Armenian at the end of their education. They were very grateful to my mom. And unfortunately, she died also very young, 58 years old. But she managed to keep my son, and when he was 2 years old, and she told me that she will teach him Armenian. He will speak Armenian because he's a very talented boy, she said. Unfortunately, so we lost our teacher, potential teacher for my son. My sister, elder sister, she's a doctor. She's living in Yerevan. The second sister, also older. I am the third one. So, and she's also a teacher. So my mother's genes are. By the way, my grandma, she was a teacher also.
Okay.
So this teacher's genealogy is very strong.
Mm-hmm. Share some stories that you may have heard from your family about their experience with genocide, violence, deportation, or migration.
Well, I told you about the story about my grandpa. He was studying in Germany, and when he arrived to Armenia, he was arrested by NKVD at the same day, and no traces, nobody knows what happened. That was a period of Stalinist repressions. So this is not genocide, but this is the Stalinist repression period in the Soviet Union.
And who told you these stories?
Mother.
Mm-hmm. And what is it like for your family to speak about them? How was your mother when she was explaining this to you?
My mother didn't told me anything when I was a kid. She started to talk to me to this only when I started to understand. And we talked. We had long conversations regarding the family history. Standing on the balcony on the 5th floor, we had a huge balcony, and to the left was Ararat Mountain. On the horizon was very remarkable view. Ararat Mountain on the left, and then Armenian Taron Mountains, and Aragats, the highest peak in Armenia, to the right. So this was the scenery for our conversations with my mom regarding family history. Interesting.
And I'm wondering here if you would like to speak a little bit about the pin on your jacket and what its significance is to you.
This pin symbolizes the 100 years anniversary of Armenian genocide in 2015, when it was organized in Armenia, and a gathering of all the top leaders from the world. So this is a symbolic remembrance that we will not forget the genocide. By the way, I forgot about that. This pin is on my jacket today.
And then, so one thing that I think is so cool is that you're from Armenia, I'm from America. We're sitting here in Warsaw talking on Bednarska Street. So, what were your early years like here in Poland? What was it like for
Sorry, early years in Poland or early years in Armenia?
early years in Poland?
In Poland.
In terms of, finding housing, your job, education, integration, politics.
Frankly speaking, I was in a very good situation, much better than compared with others, because I had my husband and I came with him to he was from Warsaw, he was born in Warsaw, and so he took all the responsibility for housing and these problems, but he was a great supporter of me, even when I was trying to find a job, and I went for this interview to the institute, to the Scientific Research Institute. It was a governmental institute, so being a foreigner, it was practically impossible to be entered. And the managing director of the institute, a professor, he invited me for the conversation, checking. And there was a very famous Polish professor, author of the Esperanto in Poland. So, Professor Czajka. I remember all these names because it was very important for me as a researcher to find a proper job, not any job I was looking for. And it was a long conversation. At the end, managing director, he asked me, they told me that you know many languages. I said, not many, only 3 or 4. And which is the 4th one? I said, Spanish. And that professor of Esperanto, he asked something in Esperanto. Immediately, it was, suddenly, just to check my reaction. But I understood. And I answered, and my answer was in Spanish. But it came out that it was a proper answer.
And this was during the Soviet era, so...
It was 86.
Were you speaking in Russian or were you speaking in Polish during this interview?
Immediately I started speaking Polish.
Polish?
Immediately, because I understood that, knowing of English language helped me very much. Because if I can't explain in Polish something, I was trying to explain in Russian. When the reaction was negative, I was trying to explain in English, and then reaction was quite different.
Was it a positive reaction to English?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes, definitively positive reaction.
And in terms of integrating with the community in Warsaw, you've mentioned that your husband is from Warsaw, so I'm sure that you were introduced to his family, to his friends, but I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about integrating into the Armenian community in Poland.
I was lucky to meet a very good Armenian family. She was Armenian. He was Polish with Armenian background with his family. So very, very intelligent, intellectual family. Medical education, both of them. But I knew her from Yerevan. She was from Yerevan, and she went to the medical university with my sister. They were from the same group.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? And I've heard that she was, she went to Poland when I was in Yerevan. I've heard that she went to Poland because she married a Pole. And that was only just an information. But when I came to Poland, I remember when I called them, I find them by the telephone book. There was no internet at that time. And we started to be very close to each other. It was a very comfy family for me.
Mm-hmm.
Armenian, Polish, and their kids. And my son, they were also like brothers and sisters. So it was very comfy situation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not besides my husband, to have one family also with. And then of course we gain some friends, acquaintances, but mainly friends, close friends, and some of them, they are my friend until now.
Wow.
So many years.
So you mentioned that both of your siblings still live in
Mm-hmm.
Armenia, and I'm wondering how you feel your sense of identity as an Armenian has changed since moving from
No.
Armenia?
No, which is very different from some of Armenians who they want to throw away, everything which is connected from Armenia. They are in Europe and that's all. That's usually the younger generation. But I noticed recently that some of them are coming back to the roots. They are starting. Armenian community in Poland is very active in cultural, in the educational fields, and Armenian kids, they start speaking Armenian. They were born in Poland,
Mm-hmm.
but they are going to Armenian school here once a week.
Mm-hmm.
They have, and during the recent years, they have achievements, quite a lot of achievements. Even there recently were on a concert where all Armenian kids were taking part, and it was very, very positive.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, it was difficult. There was no school, no newspaper, nothing. To be Armenian in Poland, it means you have to start from zero. Besides the Polish Armenians, which have all these old traditions, and they were continuing their educational and cultural activities, but not these newcomers. So it was a problem for the newcomers to be integrated. But thanks God, all these 20 years, more than 20 years, around 30 years probably, situation has changed, and there are possibilities to go to Armenian school, to read Armenian newspaper, and new Armenian newspaper as well recently. Monetic, it's her Armenian Herald, which is very interesting. My friends, Martha's, her father was an editor-in-chief of the Armenian Herald in USA.
Okay.
For 22 years. They were living in New York.
Wow.
And 22 years he was editing Armenian newspaper in United States. when they came back to Soviet Union in '68, Martha, she started to go to in our school. So we get acquainted with her, and we start to be friends with her from that time. So 67, 68. Now she's in Boston. She's a doctor in Boston. Hi, Martha.
So one thing I'm curious about, aside from the difference in time period, how do you feel that your son's childhood was different or was similar to yours, with your son growing up as someone of Armenian heritage in Warsaw versus you growing up in Armenia?
It's a complicated question.
Yeah, so maybe we could break it down to ask just more about your childhood.
No, it's okay. Comparison of my son's childhood with whom? With my childhood?
With yours, as in someone who's Armenian growing up in Armenia versus someone who is Armenian.
There is a difference, of course, because being Armenian in Armenia, it's a conflict situation. You don't have any problems with adaptation or any other kind of problem. Regarding my son, he didn't have any problem until the guys in the first class, it's 6, 7 years old boys and girls, until they understood that he was born in Moscow. So, some information was leaked in the school. And when one of the boys, he realized that it was the 80s, when the anti-Russian was very high in Poland. And that guy wrote several bad words to my son, and Rusek, that expression in Polish means, it's a bad manner. I took this, and I was working in that Institute of Youth Problems Research, a governmental institute. Can you imagine? And I showed this paper to all my colleagues, these scientists. I said, what shall I do with this? Can you explain me? Can you advise me? What shall I do? Go to the principal of the school and ask her to intervene. And I did that. I went to that principal and I said, this is a social problem. If there is intolerance, because there is no evident cause. He didn't do anything bad to that boy. That boy realized that he was born in Moscow, and that was enough for him to. So I talked to this principal, and she said, we'll do our best to avoid this situation. Okay, thank you. After some times, the situation was repeated. And then I took into my hand. I went to the school, and I told the principal before, I said, if you will not do anything, I will do on myself. I will take the charge to correct that boy. I talked to that boy in my, I finished the Armenian Pedagogical University. I can manage to speak with kids also. So after my conversation with him, it was stopped. Many years later, I asked, we were talking with my son, I said, well, how are the kids? Do you remember what from your school? Oh, everything is okay. I met Michael. I met this one, very funny. My son was very open-minded person, always. I said, what about that guy that didn't like you? Oh, before that, principal told me that he's from a very difficult family.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't throw him away from the school because he's from a difficult family, and they have to, socially difficult family, and they have to help him.
Mm-hmm.
So they helped in that way that when I asked, where is that boy now? He said, in a prison. Drugs and the final. So I said, listen, in the first class, that was evident that there are serious problems with that boy, and there was no proper intervention
Mm-hmm.
to prevent that. Anyway, that was only one aspect. In the other fields, my son he has a very comfy period of his childhood and adolescent also. No other problems besides his character, too open.
So, what was it like growing up for you? What were your favorite childhood activities? Who were your closest friends? And
favorite activities: playing football in our yard with my boys, my friends, hiking, and in the school years and later, when in the student period, I liked to travel a lot in Armenia and hiking in the mountains. And this research activity was very active in my way of being. I knew all these churches, where they are situated, when they were built, who was the architect. So I was interested in that. That was the history of not only Armenia, but the history of the mankind of that exact period of geographical region. And that's why when I'm reading what's going on now in Artsakh, all these old monuments, all these churches, cathedrals from the 7th century. There is a church from 4th century, 5th century, just after the Christianity in Armenia. Nobody knows what's going on with them. Recently, there was a very interesting exhibition of photographs in SGH, Szkoła Główna Handlowa. It's one of the first universities in Poland, economical university. And the embassy organized this exhibition, and all these rectors of the Polish universities, they were on a conference in that school. And during their break, they went out and they were acquainted to this historical problem situation. So that's a pain in my heart. And I can imagine. This is something which is difficult to understand. Indifferent reaction of the of the world. Maybe there are a lot of problems in the world that they don't pay attention to several cathedrals or churches. Maybe this year is a difficult year for the world.
Mm-hmm. Growing up, did your family practice religion?
I can't answer to that question because the religion was in Soviet Union. It was banned.
So,
But I know that my mother took me to Echmiadzin and baptized.
mm-hmm.
So I know that,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps me to keep that balance in my life. Thanks God, it's not forbidden. Everything has a right to do it, to believe what he wants to believe.
And during the Soviet Union, what sorts of holidays would you celebrate and how?
The main holiday was the celebration of New Year. That's for everyone, the celebration of the New Year. Of course, birthdays. We were celebrating our birthdays traditionally in our school.
Mm-hmm.
There was a party once a quarter. For example, for 3 months, the pupils of our class who were born in spring, in autumn, summer, and winter. And our teachers were organizing these celebrations, birthday parties. Incredible. So we were dancing, laughing, of course singing Happy Birthday. And everyone who speaks English or doesn't speak English, everyone from the parents, they were singing Happy Birthday with us. And of course, when we were older a little bit, I remember the celebration of 2750th anniversary of Yerevan, founding of Yerevan city, capital. 2750 years, it was 1968, because they found this stone with hieroglyphic inscriptions that I am Argishti, son of Manoa king, and I founded this city and called it Erebuni. And that description, scientists, they read it. Anyway, so we have our passport, identification card. It is in Yerevan Museum. Erebuni Museum, sorry. Erebuni Museum.
And what was school like? What languages would you use? What subjects were taught? I imagine during the Soviet Union there were likely some things that weren't taught or couldn't be taught.
What languages were taught? 3 languages. Besides Russian, there were popular 3 languages in the schools as foreign language: English, German, French.
Okay.
So it depends on which school you were attending.
Okay.
And in 61, our school was opened before it was Armenian school, but in 1961 it was a new challenge they opened several classes with English language from the first class, which was usually the foreign language was entered to the programs after fifth or sixth class in educational programs. And that was the revolutionary decision. And my mother decided to give my documents. I remember exactly how my dad and mom, they kept me, and we went to that school. The first day of that English school. And I met all my friends with whom then 10 years we were very close until now. So thanks to my parents and especially my mother, because it was her bold decision. She was a good not only psychology, but from pedagogical point of view, she made a proper decision at the proper moment. She used that moment. And even her sister, she was teacher of Russian, and she said, why do you give her to that school? You and your husband, you are Armenians, you're speaking Armenian only at home. You can't help her if she will have any problems in the school. And my mother said, I'm a teacher, and I understand that this program is dedicated to a middle level of, not very high, but just middle level of the pupil of any kid of 6 or 7 years old. If she will have problems, I will take her to another school, no problem. And she was right.
Tell me more about the community you lived in.
About
the community that you lived in. What was it like, and how did your neighborhood look? Describing it as if you're there.
The neighborhood was fantastic, which is very rare now. The neighborhood, you can imagine, for example, 5 stories building where all the doors are open, they are not closed. We were living as a community, helping each other, and some pain or something. Oh, there's a doctor. She was Jewish, with her husband. There were Jewish medical and military medical. So they worked all their life helping people. So the other, if some problems, we discussed everything all together. We used to play ping pong on our balcony. We had a lot of big balconies, and playing. And when the ball was thrown away, and all the kids were gathering these balls, and we had a small basket, and they were putting it into basket, and I was taking it to the floor. So the community, I mean the atmosphere in our building, in that yard, we all helped each other very much. But that was in 50s, beginning of 60s, and then the situation changed.
And what about your neighborhood here in Warsaw?
I have a very good, here in Warsaw, the difference is between the mentality is quite different than we had in Armenia. We're more open there in Armenia to help each other. Here it is more, they are correct, but they want to talk to you, they want to ask questions because you are a little bit different from them. It but there is a difference between Armenian mentality and Polish mentality. But I can't say that it's not convenient. Maybe it is more convenient now not to intervene into my life, for example. Every time needs some special behavior from you to others, and vice versa from them to you.
And so you've spoken on this briefly about how you first made Armenian connections in Warsaw, but as the Armenian population grew in Warsaw, what were your interactions like?
Oh, I can say quite surely. At the beginning, for example, I am walking in the street and I hear something. Someone speaks Armenian. My first reaction was, "May I help you?" That's exactly at the beginning of 80s. May I help you? Because it was rare to hear Armenian, and to hear Armenian in Warsaw, so maybe. So I can say that a lot of such circumstances that they need some help, support, or just to call somewhere. And then at the beginning of this new wave of economical arrival, the situation was changed because their economical situation was so hard, so difficult, that they were trying to gather their forces to help each other. For example, this illegal trade or illegal activities, and you have to be very aware of not to intervene in every problem with Armenians, because the situation was changed in which way? Before, Armenians were intellectual and we were proud, and I always say that proud Armenians. That was my slogan for some time in Facebook. Proud Armenians, proud Armenians. If someone was doing something positive, why not? And in 98, a new an embassy was established in Warsaw, and the newly appointed ambassador, at the beginning he was Shorjafer, he invited me to work with him, with Armenians, and so on and so forth. So I have that experience also, to work for some time. And it was shocking for me to see all these messages from Polish police regarding Armenians, how many Armenians were arrested. There were, anyway, a lot of problems, low problems with. But thanks God, they managed to solve these problems. These illegal activities. After the Polish government, they decided to make this legalization of documents of Armenians. After that, the situation was calmer. They went to proper direction. Now a lot of interesting. There are a lot of Armenian, not companies, foundations, several foundations, which are doing quite a huge job for for developing the Armenian heritage.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of historical archives, books and everything from Armenians who were living in Lvov region. It is Western Ukraine now,
Mm-hmm.
but in 30s it was part of Poland. And being part of Poland, Armenians who were going out from Armenia to Europe, they stayed in Lvov. They built the cathedral in Lvov, and even the cardinal was Armenian, and he was a member of Polish parliament. Very interesting, Teodorovich. So that man managed to gather all these archives, Armenian archives. So it was gathered in that Armenian cathedral. And after the war, when it was separated and that part of Poland was given to Ukraine, to the Soviet Union, let's say, the church, they managed to save the property and to bring it to Poland. And you can find a lot of interesting artifacts in Armenian, its foundation, the foundation of Armenian heritage. There is another foundation which was also founded in Warsaw, also dealing with the cultural, historical, and a lot of other foundations which are also dealing in cultural or educational fields. So, you know, it's difficult to speak about, because their activities, their achievements are quite big, quite serious. I'm usually take part in all these concerts, gatherings, cultural evenings.
Mm-hmm.
They are inviting me. I'm very glad that they don't forget me. And besides, due to my proper knowledge of Polish and proper knowledge of Armenian, literary Armenian, thanks to my mom and my school. So I was invited as an interpreter for all these first serious delegations from Armenia to Poland, including the president's visit, all the ministers and decision makers. From the 90s, quite a lot. Members of the parliament, so as well as even some American company. Have you heard Chemonics?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Many years ago, Kamanics asked me if I will help them to translate the Polish civil law, civil procedure law. It was a huge. It was a program which United States implemented in Europe, the rule of law, under this rule of law. And I started to make serious translations. So I understood that this is very important, this is huge. The next important, interesting job was from American Secret Service. Clark International, there is a translation company which is dealing with them, and they asked to translate the anti-terrorist assistance program of the United States for former Soviet Union countries. They were teaching how to avoid, but from English into Armenian. So the other guy who was working with me was in Armenia, and thanks to the internet, so the feedback every evening, I was giving the feedback to my project manager in New York. It was when my husband came in, when he saw this, the seal of the of the Secret Service. He said, "Do you want coffee?" And they were laughing at me because my son was proud. Oh, my mother is doing something very interesting. But I had that satisfaction that my job was important for someone. And I think that it was important. It's very difficult for me now. The whole life, passed in front of my eyes. Rafi Hovhannisyan, that first minister of foreign affairs, he told me once, his wife came to Warsaw for 2 days for a conference. She's providing the Orran Foundation in Armenia, helping children from Armenia, from Artsakh, who need some help, support. So, and my son told her, if you are 2 days in Warsaw, have you been in Krakow? She said, no, I haven't been. Then please, you can take 1 day off from your conference. We will take you to Krakow. Can you imagine? And she was happy, she was satisfied. We all were satisfied because it was a nice trip to Krakow. And during the whole time to Krakow and back, my husband driving the car and son. So we talked a lot, and finally she said to Robert, my son, you must write a book about your mother. I said, unfortunately, I can't write everything. It's very difficult. Anyway.
What do you feel makes the Armenian community in Poland unique or special?
The heritage, the huge heritage which connect all us, that we are not indifferent when we saw a document printed in our language many, many hundreds of years ago, and someone can read and explain what was written in 13th century, 15th century. This is something which belongs to all us, like Armenians. That's something that we are proud of heritage. Like Jews are proud of their heritage. So I can understand them, and because I understand that in my way also, how we react